The point, though, is before you start asking black or white, can I not? The bigger question is, what are you wanting? And so should Christians want barrenness? And the answer to that question biblically is no. No, no, and a million times over, no. Is there a good motive for group barrenness by which we would deplete our population base by well over half in one generation? That's what we did. No, there's not a good motive for that. There's not a reason we should do that. And there are certainly things we should have avoided even in trying to do that, such as, let me go hardcore here, contraceptives all prevent contraception. Not all of them do it by killing the baby. Those are called abortifacients. Not all contraceptives are abortifacients, but all abortifacients are contraceptives. That is, abortion's a contraceptive. At least that's how it gets used. So, I mean, he's already conceived, she, he. But then again, that's what happens with the pill as well. The pill has 3 ways in which it works. None of these ways are particularly good for your feminine body over the long haul, just so you know. I mean, read the fine print and the long-term studies on this stuff. It's not really a healthy way to exist. But that aside, it prevents conception in 2 ways and prevents pregnancy in 3 ways. It prevents conception by decreasing the chances of an egg actually being released. It increases contraception, prevention of conceiving. It decreases conception by less eggs, more hostile environment to the sperm, so the less sperm get through. So they're not there. It's kind of like a stopping everything from getting there. Those are the 2 ways that it is, in fact, a contraceptive. But it also works a 3rd way, which is an abortifacient. And that is that if, in fact, an egg gets out, and if, in fact, a sperm gets to the egg, and conception does take place, then the birth control pill works by abortion, by shrinking the lining of the uterine inner wall to like a infinitesimal number, by the way. It's like 1/10 of its original size. Very, very small. Skyscraper, 1 story, right? And that is the fertile soil wherein this fertilized, conceived, actual baby, new conceived, days old, will move over and implant and eventually form the placenta, but the baby's already part of this thing too on the edge of it, coming off the wall the whole time, right? So that wall that's fertile soil, the heightened estrogen in the system, is it progesterone? I forget. The hormones, the pill is in your system, is shrinking that wall so that even a conceived egg, a baby, will pass through, be unable to plant, and will end up dying in the toilet, actually. You won't know this because this all happened just as part of your monthly cycle, and you, in theory, would not be bothered by it until you learned about it later when someone like me did the awful thing of telling you the truth. That happened to me too, and I get how painful that is. I'm also very grateful that the person told me. So as a result, I was able to stop the practice and cease potentially aborting my children and instead have a couple, which was great. So in this regard then, right? So contraceptives which abort, in which you ought to include the pill as a potential. It does not only work by abortion, and they don't ever tell you that that's part of it, but it's there. It's in the literature of old, and they scrub it from fine print these days, even, I've heard. So they don't want you to know. But the preventing of it by abortifacient always must be something that is rejected. So the IUD would be another way that works this way. I believe the ones that inject in the arm as well. And then you have this other thing that's in between abstinence and all the chemicals that kill the babies, okay? And that's what you maybe would also think of as contraception. And what I can tell you is that that stuff is there. And if you're using it, it's just sort of one of those things where, like, it's not a sin in the same way that abortifacients are a sin. Like, we can by no means call this the same level of evil. And yet it's really a strange thing. I mean, like there's something going on there that's not a healthy cultural dynamic wherein we believe that we believe it's bad to have more of us. That shows you how sinful we realize we are as a culture. We actually think the culture is one of despair and that it should not continue. However, Christians should have no part of that. And it shows you then the more we do this, who we're really listening to, right? So it's not about like, you bad people who don't want to have kids. It's more like, look who you're listening to. Look who's formed your view of what a child is. Look what you think a valuable life is about and how much it's been taken from you. That you would even conceive barrening your wife as an option. Like the old ancient world, like you could walk up, I'm exacerbating a little bit, but you walk up to someone and suggest this idea, he's going to be insulted. You want me not to have kids? What? Should I kill you? Right? I mean, like that's like the level of insult, right? That goes on in this, and we've adopted it. We're just slave people. We're throwing our own babies in the river. And sometimes actually. So I don't know what you read. I know this debate's one we're not allowed to have in the LCMS. It was settled long ago when we changed our mind and decided that birth control was okay after for many, many decades, even century, said it was not. Along with the great history of the Christian church that generally believes let God be the author of life on this one, just as we let him be the author of death. But we've kind of swept that under the rug for the sake of, I don't know, 1970s probably. I think then, recovering a desire to not be barren as a group is important to our future. I'm going to repeat that as the best thing I said in the last 10 minutes. I'm going to suggest that recovering our desire to propagate ourselves, to have more of ourselves as a group, whatever group you're a part of, is an important part of that group's future. And when we stopped propagating ourselves, we stopped existing. And LCMS, we're still feeling the hemorrhage of this. Our buildings, our institutions, they're shaking at the roots. And our president even said, was it 6 years ago, 9 years ago, he just studied it and he showed how the entire collapse of our system is really at the foot of the birth control pill. It's really at the foot of procreation. And anybody who had 3 or 4 kids per family, like South Dakota district, they're doing fine. But everywhere else where we had less than 2 kids, well, look what's happening. It's collapsing. So it's not just a matter of what the theology says. There's a pragmatic level of this. If you don't believe you should continue, then you won't. And why would you let anyone convince you that you shouldn't? And why would a whole church body who thinks it's the soul-saving orthodox factor of God on earth not want to have kids? It's just nuts.